Hey guys, and welcome to the third tutorial video in Robot C. And so the last one I introduced you guys to variables, and so in this particular tutorial I'm going to teach you guys how to work with variables. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to do all of this inside the main task because this is where all of your code is generally going to go. So I'm just going to start working here so you guys kind of get accustomed to it. So the first thing we're going to do, as I said, we're going to work with variables. So we're just going to start out with working with integers. But what we're going to do is applicable for doubles and floats, not for booleans, but for doubles and floats as well, and any other kind of actual numbers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to declare a variable. So we're going to specify the kind of variable it is, and so it's an int. And then we're going to give it its name, and we're going to call it test. And we're just going to set it equal to 1. So now we have a variable called test, and it has a value of 1. But let's say we wanted to add 1 to it. Let's say we wanted test to be 2 now. So there's a couple different ways we could do this. We could say test, and this references the variable test up here. So this test is referencing this test is equal to, if we wanted to add 1 to it, we could say it's equal to test plus 1. And that could look a little confusing at first because maybe the first time you look at it, you're saying, okay, we're taking the value of test and we're setting it equal to test, and then the test is now going to be equal to what we're setting it over here. And so you could think that it ends up being like a circular loop, but it's not. What it really is we're setting a new value of test, and it's equal to the current value of test plus 1. So our new value of test is equal to the current value, which is 1, plus 1. So then test is now equal to 2. So if we reference test down here, test would be equal to 2. But there's another way that we can do this. Instead of writing out test equals test plus 1, we can do a little bit of shorthand. And you can just say test plus equals 1. And so what that does is it just adds 1 to the test. And so that's a little more clear. It makes a little bit more sense as to what you're doing. And obviously this wouldn't have to be just 1. This could be 10 or 2 or 6 or whatever number you wanted. So there's the two different ways to add to a variable, add a number to a variable. You can do the test plus, test equals test plus 6, or test plus equals 6. And both of these would increase the value of test by 6. So here it starts as 1, here it's 7, and then here it's 13. Okay, so that's how you would add a number to a variable, and like I said, you could do this with doubles or floats as well. But let's say you wanted to add two variables together. Let's say we had an int test and we had another int test2, and this was equal to 3. And we wanted to add those two variables together, and we wanted it to be a new value of test. So we could say test equals test plus test2. And so test would now be equal to 4 because it's doing the current value of test 1 plus the current value of test 2, which is 3, and 1 plus 3 is 4. But like we did it before, we could just do test plus equals test 2. And so now it would add 3 to the current value of test and would make it 4. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. And so you can do the same thing like we just did addition. You could do the same thing for subtraction. So if, say, we wanted to subtract, you could do minus equals, and then that would subtract 3 from 1. Or you could do the test equals test minus test 2. You could do either way. And so both of these are equivalent. They're doing the same thing. And so you can just basically, for all your operations, addition, subtraction, addition, I'm sorry, I already said addition, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, you could just use whatever. So if you wanted to multiply, you could do that, or you could do times equals. Or if you wanted to do division, you could do divided by. You could do divided by equals. So you need to be careful with the division, however, when you start getting into division of integers, because integers are only whole numbers. So if you were, let's say we had test was equal to 2. And so we were doing here test divided equals test2. So we'd be setting a new value of test equal to the current value of test divided by the current value of test2. So we'd be setting the new value of test equal to 2 divided by 3. And so that would not actually be 2/3. Depending on the compiler, it would treat it differently. It could because if you think about it in terms of a decimal, 2 divided by 3 is equal to 0.666666, and that just goes on forever, and 7. So there's a couple different things it could do this. It could truncate it. It could eliminate everything, because this is really 0.6, so it could just totally eliminate the decimal, and so it would be equal to 0. And so instead of having your value of test equal to 2/3 like you thought, it would actually be equal to 0, and so that could get confusing. So what you want to do when you're dividing with integers is you want to set a new variable and you want to make it a double or a float, because those take into consideration the decimal. So you could say double test decimal equals test divided by test 2. And so then this would have the value of 2/3. Okay? So there's one more thing that I want to teach you about working with variables, and that it ties in very well with the division. It's called the modulo. Modulo. It's called the modulo, and it's M-O-D-U-L-O is how it's spelled. And what that is it gets the remainder of two numbers or a couple numbers. So if we're making a new int, and it's int remainder equals test, and then you use the shift 5 to get the little percent sign, 3. Not 3, test 2, excuse me. And so what this would do, we're declaring a new variable, it's an integer, and it's equal to the remainder of test 2 divided by test 3. So test divided by test 2, I think I said that wrong. It's the remainder of test divided by test 2. And test is 2, test 3 is 2, so it's the remainder of 2 divided by 3, which is 2, because you don't have a whole number, so your remainder is 2. So this would have a value of 2, the remainder would. If we were to swap this and say test 2, and then test, mod test, the modulo, you can call it like mod test, or refer to the modulo as like a mod. So test 2 mod test would be 3 divided by 2, which is 1.5, and so we can eliminate the whole number out front, because this is equal to test 2 divided by test is equal to, and this isn't actual coding, this is just me walking you guys through the steps. This is equal to 3 divided by 2, it's equal to 1.5. So our remainder is this 0.5 here, which is 1/2. And so, I mean, obviously this doesn't equal 1/2, but our remainder is 1/2. And so our remainder is 1. So this would be remainder in this case with that line of code. Remainder would be set to 1. So you could do like we were doing before. If you wanted to set a value of test, you could do that, the modulo, and then test 2. You could do that. And that is equal to the same thing as test equals test mod test 2. Okay, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. That should be an equal sign. This operator isn't really used all that frequently, but if you ever needed to get the remainder of something, it's really handy to have. Okay, so that's just going to be a short video on this one, just teaching you guys a little bit how to work with variables. And so I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below, and thank you guys very much.